Now, when it comes to discussing death and dying, I feel very much like the Zen master. One of his very brilliant students said to him, "Master, you know so many things about life and death, but you never said anything about death. So please tell me and illumine me about death." And the Zen master says, "I don't know nothing." He said, how can that be, Master? You are such a brilliant man, you know so many things. Why don't you know something about death? And he said, "That's because I'm not a dead master yet." And I must confess, though I seem to know a great deal about death, which I really do, I really don't know everything until I die. So when I die, please ask me again. And I'll really give you the real dope there. But I always want to say something about death for a very obvious reason. I just saw a videotape the other day, a home video, about this remarkable man from the 16th century, Nostradamus. And he predicted many, many things. And all of his prediction, let's say he gave about 500 predictions, but 490 have come true. But he also predicted about the future. And he said, in May, and he gave the date, in May 1988, the earth will witness a catastrophe they have never witnessed before. So I'm going to take that rather seriously, and you hear a great deal, especially coming in July 24th. A good friend of mine, who's perhaps one of the greatest psychics of the world, her name is Greta Woodruff, is going to lecture at the university about such prediction. And she bases not on so-called psychic abilities, but amazing knowledge of everything that's happening. And her husband is quite a scholar, and is able to gather together in an amazing way expert predictions of tsunamis, earthquakes, and natural catastrophe, which Notre Dame suggests may happen on May 1988. So I'm rather concerned about this phenomenon called death. And I'm also concerned about it for another reason. Some of you may have heard of Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. And I've worked with her very closely. And she also said that at some crucial moments of her life, she had a kind of a breakthrough when some kind of messages came to her about such catastrophic happenings. So she was literally commissioned by the so-called spirits to sort of prepare people. So when it should happen, at least there can be a certain kind of dignity, a certain kind of peace pervading the whole land. For these practical, and of course the other reason is that I work with dying people a great deal. And I can see what happens to the survivors when in so many ways they're unprepared and they think of death only as a great catastrophe, a tragedy, and an awesome problem. And my job tonight is to share with you another perception about death. So I'm going to say to you that when I deal with death, I really don't deal with the problem. I don't see death as a problem at all. I see it as a sort of a mystery. And you know, mystery simply suggests that we can never know anything about it. You think you know, and then this another dimension opens up. You reach that dimension, it opens up another one. It's much like Cracker Jack. You remember when we were kids? The more you eat, the more you want. You never get to know enough or to have enough. And mystery always beckons you, almost seductively brings you to the edge, and then opens up another dimension. When you thought you got to the depth of something, then amazingly enough, it opens up another depth. And I can give you illustration. The last 2 weeks, I worked with 2 dying people, and I'm going to use some of their experiences to illumine what I'm saying about death, not so much as a problem, but the amazing ability to open up depth, to push boundaries you never thought you could push. Death does this for you. So I deal with death then, as you can see, from a very different perception. Okay? So let me begin. I tell this story because it illustrates something very profound about death. And the story is about a naval maneuver. It was a very foggy evening, and the big ship is this Missouri battleship, and the admiral is on it. And he sees in the distance a brilliant light approaching his ship. So he warns, he says, "Tell that goddamn ship to turn right, starboard." So the message goes to go, "Starboard, turn right, turn right." And the message comes, "You turn right, you turn right." And thinking that's another military ship, God damn it, he says, "I'm the admiral." So he said, "You let them know who is in charge here." And the message goes, "This is Admiral Charles C. Longworthy," a great name in military history. And they wait, and sure enough, the message comes. "This is Tom C. Jones." The Admiral scratches. "Never heard anybody with Tom C. Jones, He said, "They must be playing some kind of a game." But now the lights are coming closer and closer and fearful of an awesome collision. He said, "Let them know this is the mighty battleship Missouri." So the message goes, "Battleship Missouri." And they're waiting for the reply, and the reply comes, "This is a lighthouse." My friends, today, more than any time in the world history, death is a real lighthouse today. And I want to use death as this metaphor of how it can shine lights, and we better see what death illumines, what this light really exposes. So many of us want to hide from this light. And I can see over and over as I work with dying people how many are caught unaware. I will tell you about this remarkable, great financier in our community. Only 2 weeks ago he came and said, "I thought I had everything under control, great developer, tremendous resources. And I thought in some way for the rest of my life I will be in control." Then he found out only a month ago his wife is terminal with cancer. And for the first time in his life, there was a shaking of his foundation. And it's never been the same these last 2 weeks. A man in total control has his roots and foundation literally shaken. And I'm hoping that when this light shines on him, it can help him build another foundation that can stand in the light of death. And I'm hoping all of us too, after I get through sharing with you some insight and experiences, you can let this light shine on your life, exposing what needs to be exposed, strengthening what needs to be strengthened. And somehow together as a community of people who can stand in the glare of this light, proclaim that there is something more awesome than death itself. That's what I want to conclude with. So let's look at this light then, this death as a metaphor, as a lighthouse. And light, as you know, doesn't try to expose, it just shines, doesn't it? And whatever it shines stands out. So death is not some judgment. Death is not something that goes after things. Death has nothing in mind about claiming victims. Death knows nothing about victory. Death is simply what it is, death. A very necessary energy in our life. For without the death, none of us can treasure life the way we do. It's because this death is always in the midst of us every time. It's the presence of this tremendous light in the midst of our lives that gives to our life the tang, the richness, and the pungency, doesn't it? Imagine our not having to die at all. So 100, 200 years from now, you and I will meet each other down the road and say, how are you today? It's precisely the presence of death that allows us to make of our lives something worthy, isn't it? So let me now look at this phenomena a little closer. I'm going to say two things. Now, the language I use is really the language of mystery. That is, if something is mysterious, then you ought to create a language that really gets to the heart of the mystery. Love is a mystery, isn't it? Freedom is a mystery. So you got to have a language that gets close to this kind of mystery. So analysis alone would not do it. Poetry may, music may, but I'm a lousy poet and I can't sing really. So I'll try to describe as faithfully as I can through a language called paradox, meaning something is two things at the same time. Everything is we call yin and yang, light and dark, high and low, at the same time. And death is this amazing ability to be both destructive, totally destructive, at the same time totally liberating. Death is always an event that happens, we say at the end of life, doctor says dead. So death is an event that occurs, we call at the end of life. And yet in an amazing way, this same phenomena is present at the beginning. It's a process. It's an element. So I not emphasize the obvious, I take the other side, the yin side of life, and look at it. So what I said is this, that at this moment, every one of us are experiencing death in our body. Just to dramatize it, I'm going to hear this death. Woo! In every second, about 6 million cells die in our body, just like that. So if you want to see the death, take a wash in the tub, right? And afterwards, you see the ring around the tub. That's the death of your cells, right? So tomorrow, when you take a bath and you see the ring around, for heaven's sake, salute those cells. Medically, they say every 5 months, except for the cells in the brain, nearly all the cells are new cells. So every 5 months, my wife and I have to take our marriage vows anew. A new being has emerged, Now, this is a very dramatic way of saying, my friends, death is not only something that happens at the end, it's something that's always in you. It's always in you, doing its work. And the amazing law about nature is, until that thing dies, until I planted some lettuce seed, And when I planted it, I said to the seeds, please die. Otherwise, the lettuce will never come up. It's only when the seed dies, then you have the plant emerging. The human sperm, only when it fertilizes the female ovum. And that sperm knows the minute it hits the wahine inside there, it's going to muck it. And boy, what a glorious way to go. But see what it does. By dying, it fertilizes. And every process from that point on, the single cell divides into two and multiple, and eventually there emerges a human being. This is the law, my friends. Only when the death allows it to be what it is, do you have a real creation. Every new creation is because death has occurred. Now for us, the death may take place on many different levels, isn't it? In terms of feelings, in terms of psychic or spiritual development, some breakthroughs. Every breakthrough means something has to go in order that this new being emerges every time. So if you take seriously the fact that death is in us, then you can see the implication of what you can do. Let me mention two. If death is part of my being, then, my friends, I can choose this death. And so when I work with dying people, I say, okay, if you like to, I will help you to affirm the death that is taking place in you and make of that dying a great achievement. My friends, every one of us can do that. Nobody needs just to let death do the work for you. You can choose that death and say of it, I'm going to take you and make of you a real work of art. And that's what we did to this girl that died on Saturday. 3 of us worked with her for 3 months, teaching her, rehearsing our dying, talking a whole lot of things, but more often than not, receiving from her some real insights. Because you will learn very quickly when you work with dying people, somehow there's something magical about dying. What it does, among other things, is to take your kind of cultural conditioning, your limitations, and start pushing it, pushing it, pushing it, pushing it. I give an example of a Nisei, 56 years of age, dying of cancer. But the one thing he has never done was to tell his children, I love you. He's never told them. So in the midst of his dying, he said, the time has come, so we arranged to have dinner that evening at his home. Then we gathered around the dinner table. And it was quite a revelation for him to say, calling each person by name, saying, Tamotsu, I really love you. And he went around the table telling everyone of his family what he always felt, but he never articulated it. And if you were there that evening, you will see a tremendous transformation, because by his saying it, he released his children to say what they never said before. And they were now all free. And they were resonating on this amazing level of love. And what a transformation that night. And I followed this family for the last 6 years. And every time we meet, we always talk about that evening. There was a breakthrough, a real breakthrough. And when he died 2 days later after that. I mean, he had completed his business. There's no reason for hanging around, and he just let go, just like that. And if you have asked this family of 5 children how they went through the grief, in 3 months they had completed the grief. If you ask them today, they will tell you that what helped them break through their grief was the gift of his dying. Right? He died in such a way that he made it so much easier for them to go through the grief. So his dying became for them this great metaphor, a gift. So when they think of the Father's death, you see, it's not this tragedy, it's a liberation. And all because dying helped him release the simple courage to affirm the love. Now I know another man, a great architect in our midst who died about 6 years ago. His dying was a very different kind, and yet in his own way he did an amazing thing. About a week before he died, before he became comatose, I was there that evening. He looked at his son and he always called him my son. He always called his wife by the wife's name. But on this evening, something amazing happened. All the cultural boundaries, all the cultural conditions that allows us to see each other in terms of our functions and blood relation was transcended. And he looked at him and said, "Oh, Son of God." That's what he said. He's not a very religious man. But he was able to penetrate, you see, all the cultural boundaries, all the functional things we are. We define ourselves in terms of that. But on this evening, he saw what was really there to be seen. And death allowed him to penetrate and see a person in terms of the image of God that they really are. That's what he meant, Son of God. And he turned to his wife, and in the most unusual language, he says, "Woman." He never called her that before. Woman. And I told them that evening that reminded me about this passage in the Bible when Jesus gives this amazing insight as well. In this particular story, a prostitute who was a former prostitute heard that Jesus was coming to a person's home, and she had the instinct that this man may not do the courtesy of washing the feet and the hair that you normally do. So she buys from her little savings this precious ointment, and she rushes to the house. It's so surprising how everyone, when they saw her, saw a function, a prostitute. And so they were kind of hoo-hoo when Jesus allowed her to touch him. And he sensed this right away, and so he said to them, "Do you see this woman?" Right? It's amazing. Not the function. Do you see an image of God? He's expressing, "Do you see this woman?" And nobody did. Well, death for this architect enabled him to penetrate and transcend all the limitations of culture. So there's something about death that has this awesome ability. In more simple terms, if you ever work with dying people, suddenly they take a whole bouquet and they just take one flower. And they just look at this one. The 20 others don't really mean too much. It's but one thing. There's something about death that starts to illumine the heart of the matter all the time. And this enables, therefore, most all dying people to learn to forgive so easily and to be so honest. They don't go all around the bush anymore. They penetrate to the jugular vein every time. That's what they do. So I'm saying then, if death is part of our lives, is always there as a presence, then our job seems to be very simple, to accept that and use it. Use it. And you hear this over and over again. A person like I have a chief executive officer that I worked about 2.5 years ago, when he heard he had leukemia, The next day, what he did was he focused on his family totally, and he left his business to associate. A business that consumed him for 40 years. But how quickly, overnight, he let that go. His priority was so clear. It's his family now. If death can do that to us, the pity is that why should we wait until we're dying, isn't it? Why can't we choose death earlier? Since it's always part of you there. If you want to see an example of a culture that took this idea of mine seriously, it's Japan. That's what the samurai is, you know. The samurai, by definition, is the man who struggles with his death to conquer it. And when he conquers that, then he's a samurai. Not whether he can kill people, that's incidental, really. The real meaning of a samurai is to live life to encounter the death. And when you've conquered it, then you are worthy to hold a sword. So my talk tonight, in one sense, can be labeled how to be a good Hawaiian samurai. You know? Yeah. Why not? Why not? And later on, I would like to share with you some things I do to help people make of their dying a great achievement. But right now, I'm simply focusing on this death and try to see it for what it is. So I said to you, it is, first of all, an amazing presence that's in us all the time, between us all the time, around the world all the time, always there, shining its light all the time. And our obligation and a responsibility then is to take that and do something with it. Now I want to say one more thing about this phenomenon called death, then I'll do the practical experiencing kind of thing with you. I said that death, on the one hand, is total destruction. And I mean total. And no fool around, you know. I mean, in Hawaii we put it, no one dies in Hawaii. It's mark it, die dead, right? Such a beautiful expression. You mark it and you're dead and you're done. All power, real power. And let's take this seriously. What I'm saying, my friends, is this. After you die, I would almost guarantee in 400 years, nobody ever remembered you lived. That's what I'm saying. And because of that, we build pyramids, we write books, we make compositions, we paint. In some way, or Japanese, Chinese style, have lots of babies. At least they carry the memory and the heritage of a family. But when the Hiroshima bomb falls, you know, so I'm not talking about something romantic about death. This death that shines is so total annihilation. If I go back to the New Testament, you see, when they said Jesus died, they really meant it. He died. No more this passing on to the, or rocking chair, roller skating to heaven. And you mark it, die dead. And he did. And to make it clear, they rolled a big stone. He was dead, my friends. Really dead. And he knew that. That's why he sweated, the Bible says, he sweated blood on the cross. He knew the horror of death. There was nothing romantic about Jesus' idea of death. It was total. And yet the amazing phenomenon is that because death is so total destruction, it hides in the depth of its darkness total liberation. This is an amazing paradox. See, the resurrection came out of the grave. It didn't come up on a Hyatt Regency, a nice other place. It came out of the grave. Yeah. And this is not just a Christian mythology. It's something very close to what life is like. That only when a thing is total in its destruction, or total in this, or total in success, whatever is total, hides within it another element every time. You and I know that when things are going our way so well, we do this one. Knock on wood, right? There's always this instinctive element at the height of something else always emerges. And so I say about death, only when we allow death to be what it is, total tragedy, then we can experience something else called total liberation at the same time. So when I see dying people, my friends, I see something so different from what other people see. I see a transformation taking place every time. Like this girl we worked with, she introduced something very comical at certain surprising moments. I tell you, this one is so funny. Here she dying, semi-comatose, and I'm telling her, release your body, go meet your maker and all that. And all of a sudden, of course, this was one Monday, we work on Tuesday and a Wednesday and Thursday, and she could hardly talk on Thursday. About 9 o'clock that day, suddenly she said, "I'm hungry!" And everyone, got caught by surprise, and then we all started laughing at the same time. What a comic release. The next thing she said, "Steak! Steak!" And the husband got what he would always wet her lips. Just keep it wetting. And she bit that damn towel. And he said, "You think it's steak?" And she said, "Mm." Then she changed him and said, "Oh, make it hamburger." This is an amazing phenomenon. Now, she wasn't play acting. She wasn't trying to be funny. Yet in an amazing way, you can see some transformation taking place. Of course, she couldn't be fed anything, but she vomited out. And she was always vomiting out blood anyway. And I couldn't quite understand, the doctors couldn't understand. She should have gone on Tuesday, actually. I had said Thursday, but I was wrong. And suddenly, I understood on Saturday morning when she died, her brother, whom she hadn't communicated for a long time, came. And this woman waited until her brother came. And they spent time together Friday evening, all evening, until 3 o'clock in the morning. When then she said, she didn't really say it, but you can tell, she said, "This is it." And a few hours later, she let go totally. And the amazing phenomenon is that this is a remarkable woman with a smile. And at that moment, she suddenly burst into an awesome Madonna smile. And when she died, that was the only thing you saw, the smile. And all of us kept saying, this is a heritage. This is a gift to us. So whenever we thought of her, this is what we see. Isn't that amazing? And sure enough, every time now I think of her, that's the smile I see. Unlike this, I just had a funeral service for this woman, tragedy by the ski boat, you remember, out in the Hawaii Kai area. And what the husband saw was a face just jammed and split. So all his memory of his wife was this tragically disfigured face. So every time they mentioned his wife's name, he would break down because that's all he saw, that tremendous disfigured face. The machine had gone right over her face. So I taught him what to do, which I will teach you later. I want him to see a face that's smiling. And we worked at it, he saw it, and this became a tremendous release for him. It's almost like a transformation. Well, I'm saying that death, sure, It's awesome, tragic, and yet it hides within it an awesome mystery, which we call liberation. And isn't life after death a kind of liberation too? I speak with great confidence about this because, you know, my friends, I died once. Some 23 years ago, I died. I had what we call clinical death. I was in an automobile, a passenger. When the car hit a tree, I was thrown out of the car. The next moment, I see myself on this road near the Eine shopping center. The next minute, I experience myself like whatever you call it, ethereal body or spiritual body, emerging from my corpse. This is the middle strip where the trees are. I looked down, and I knew this was a corpse. I knew this so clearly. Then I could see right through the roof of the car. I could see right through the steel. And I knew exactly the extent of the injury of the 3 kids in the back. This woman driver, the steering wheel became this deadly instrument, and she was speared. Her baby went through the window. I could see the baby. And I knew the extent of the injury. People parked their cars, and they were wondering. I could go right over, and I knew everyone what they were thinking. And there's the emergency, Guadalupe emergency fire station, and they heard the crash. So 3 firemen came. When I looked down, I saw the first man, and I knew exactly what he was thinking. But 20 feet before my body, and he came and he said, "My God, he's dead." And I said, "No, I'm not dead." When I said that, I came into my body. Had he not said that, I might have gone. Bye-bye, everybody. Yeah. But I came back. Yeah. They took us to the hospital at Queens, and we stayed there 3 days, and it's this amazing phenomenon. For 3 days, actually 2 days and a half, I was totally normal. I looked at the 3 kids, did all sorts of things. And the next day, the 3rd day, when I woke up, the whole room was full of fog. And when people spoke, I couldn't hear the voice. It's like, 2,000 miles away. That's a feeling. I had no sensation. So late in the afternoon, about 5:30, I had to go to the bathroom. Rang the buzzer, the nurse took me, and I did my thing. And then she opened the faucet. I put my hand, and I could feel the water. So I said, I feel. The minute I said that, the fog disappeared, and I was totally normal, just like that. When the doctor came for the evening, and I told him, I want to go home. He said, no, I'll check you tomorrow morning. I said, come early. He came, and sure enough, I was totally well. Now, I kept wondering whether this is all a dream. But I knew this fireman. I didn't know anybody else. So I went to see the fireman. And I saw him. I said, do you recognize him? He said, no. He said, I was that man that you saw. You said, my God is dead. He said, but I want to tell you something. I'm going to tell you what you were thinking before you came. And I told him, and he came all white. He didn't believe this at all. When he confirmed what I knew, then I knew this was real thing. So in some sense, apart from all the theological affirmations I know and believe in, this particular practical experience of mine confirms the idea that when we die, we go on a different journey, really. And I call that a liberation. And that's the gift of death itself. Well, so much then for the basic underpinning of what this death is all about. Now, because death is like this, I do my work with people. Yeah. So you can see I come to people with great deal of confidence. For I'm dealing now not with the problem, my friends. I'm dealing not only with the awesome tragedy, my friends. I'm dealing with some liberation here. I'm dealing with transformation. I'm dealing with gifts. That's what I'm dealing with. And this is why I said to all of my dying people, let's enter into a contract. And my job is to help you take this dying of yours and make of it a great achievement. Now this is a possibility for all of us. no matter what your accomplishment, this is your last accomplishment. But what an awesome accomplishment. Because if you can make of your death an achievement, I would tell you, you give a tremendous gift to the survivors. You let them go through the grief in a magnificent way. But much more, you will hear over and over again from philosophers, theologians, men of great wisdom, this simple statement: in the final analysis, what a man makes of his death is the test of a character. Yeah. Or when you're healthy, when you have all the resources, in some way you can do these wonderful things. But when all the symbols of these powers are somehow diminished and you are left with something called death, and you can take what this is and make of it a great work of art, is, I tell you, a magnificence, a wonder. And I'm saying all of us can do this, everyone. So let me suggest some simple ways that all of us can do it. Number one is to help in, I'm saying this hopefully that you can yourself work with others and assist them. So you don't need to be a professional. I'm professional in this area. But this is something everyone can do if you have enough compassion and care. That's all you need. But a few techniques will help. Okay? Number one, very simple. Every one of us have unfinished business. This girl that died, you see, had unfinished with her brother. I didn't know about that. And so you finish. All unfinished business. You talk to any dime people, they will tell you, they can write 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The small things. They will say, I spoke some terrible, nasty word to a friend of mine. How long ago? 10 years ago. It comes like that. It's a memory. So you finish it. You just say, my friend, forgive me. That's it. All of us have unfinished business. And they often are very small, not the big ones. But finish them up. Finish them up. Whatever they are. So assist them to finish. That's one thing. Okay? Finish up unfinished business. There's no need for us to try to manipulate. No. You allow the dying, and that's what they want to do. But they need your help. So that's one. Number two, very simple one, is to ask them what they really want to do for themselves. That's 1 week. And they will say simple things like, I haven't heard this Hawaiian hula music. Or I haven't heard Don Ho. God forgive me if you haven't. But simple things like this. Or some classical music they haven't heard. I worked with a poetess, a woman with great knowledge in poetry. And she was dying to have her 2 children read poetry to her. But she kept thinking, always, it's a burden. But the minute I asked her, she recited. So I got some books of her from her library, and then I asked the son and daughter to take time to read. Very simple. So the needs are very simple but basic. Just ask them. What is the heart's desire? And they will always tell you. Always tell you. So that's another very simple thing. Number 3, not in this order, but 3 is very important. Somewhere along the way, the family, the survivors must have talked about this and finally decided to give her permission to go. This is very important. The people, no matter how deep their pains, will hold on if there's something that hasn't been finished them. So for heaven's sake, give them permission. Just say, Dad, we really love you, but anytime you want to go, you have our permission. Just like that. When I suggest this, to the family, boy, there's lots of resistance. You're telling me, you can die anytime? And there's lots of resistance. And once you bring this up, you can tell all the kinds of hang-ups and the kinds of resentment and all kinds of psychological negativity that is behind this resistance. So we give them the chance to work it through. And once they work it through, they're much able now to say, out of our love, that you have our permission. And I've seen dying people so released and willing to go. So give them permission, my friends. Give them permission. And there's other things. When we're dying, the one thing you really don't need is your body. But in an amazing way, the body becomes the metaphor of your will. So if you want to hold on, you emphasize your body. And it wasn't altogether comical when this woman said, I'm hungry, because this was the will expressed through the body. Therefore, in my work, I try to help them touch other resources than the body. Because when the body has done its job, mostly these are cancer people that I work with, the body can no longer really sustain them. Then I say to the person, this is long before they're dying, 3 or 4 months before we talked about this thing. So I help them to focus on other resources than the body. And for dying people, the resource that comes to their mind so quickly, something they call prayer. We call religion, or the spirituality aspect. So those who have been trained to focus on this other element called religion or spirituality has an amazing resource. And I say to you, this woman that we work with is a Buddhist. So when I'm working with her, I act like I'm a Buddhist. There's no need for any of us to say, but I'm a Christian, so I cannot handle it. For heaven's sake, God is going to release you from every label and restore you as a human being who loves and cares. And that's the basis out of which you're going to work. You don't work because you're a Christian or Buddhist or Hindu. You're there because you're a person who cares, really. So you come out of this love and compassion. So don't get hung up. Just because you are not a Buddha, you can handle it. Oh, you handle it. And I use the word Buddha. Absolutely. I will tell you an amazing story. Just again, about 3 days ago, I got this call from Queens that this man is just frightened to die. In the last 4 days, he's been struggling, cursing all kinds of things. And he wouldn't die. Doctor expected him to die. And this fear evidently kept him going. It's an amazing phenomenon. And so this daughter called me and said, please go and help him remove this fear. So I got there, his wife was there, and the wife said, oh, darling, we talked about Dr. Aoki, he's here. You want to hear him? He said, no. And she gave many seductive statements, and he kept saying no. And there I am looking at all this thing. He said, get the hell out of here. Doesn't want me at all. But I persisted because I was there out of care, out of compassion. So I said to her, why don't you let me talk with him? But she said, but he said no. Yeah. But it depends how you look at the no. Is this it could be yes from my point of view, You never lose humor when you do this work. And so she said, well, let me try. So I did. I talked to him for 10 minutes. And my basic statement was, I said, my friend, we're going to help each other remove the fear. And the best way I know, you take the fear and put it in a very strong place. And when the fear is there, it cannot be fear anymore. So I said, why don't we give the fear to God? Yeah. He can take it. Yeah. And when you put it in God's hands, then you don't have any more of the fear left. You have only God. I kept saying this over, and I kept reading scriptures to that effect. And you know an amazing thing? I didn't know this, but she told me afterwards. He was up like this in his bed, but he couldn't move. But after I got through talking like that, he suddenly made the sign of the cross. And he said, Amen. And he died 2 hours later. Yeah. Now, I'm using this illustration to make my final point. Death is a powerful thing. It's a light that can search, expose, reveal, illumine. But there's something more powerful than death. And that's something we call love. Love is more powerful. So when this man was able to affirm his basic fear and able to really acknowledge it, then and only then could something else emerge to transform it. And this was love. This was the sign of love. So what do we do with death? My answer is, allow it to be what it is. It's amazing light. And like all light, it exposes as well as it illumines, it strengthens. Well, I'm going to stop now, and I hope we can just now talk with each other, and I can give you lots more examples, but let's talk to each other and see where we go from here. Okay? Now, before we talk, maybe I do one thing. Would you come up here? I know the church has this awesome chair, and it gets a little hard on Okole after a while. So I'm going to let you stand after a while. But this is how you're going to stand. Just relax. It sounds loud, but it doesn't hurt. It's really great. When I do what he needs, Okole, I do a little bit of Okole. Okay, now let me explain what I've done. So make this an art instead of just an exercise. Now to do this, see, when I do this work, you always have lots of people around, and they don't know what to do. So in the hospital, I let them do this kind of thing. There's lots of exercise. So in this one, the tappee. Now, before I do this work, you must always work on yourself. This is the cardinal rule in this work. When you're working with somebody, you work on yourself first. Always work on yourself. Because until you are, the wellness symbol, how can you, share? So work on yourself. And what I do, I just centered myself. That's all. Which is I relax myself, and now I put focus. And the focus I'm doing is on her. Okay? So I let my hands now express my concern, my love, and my compassion. So when I do this, I know this is of my concern, this hand. It's not just a hand now. It's much more. It's me, but this way. Now there's certain rules. You follow always the contour of the person. As long as you follow the contour, it doesn't hurt. But if you do this, it hurts. This way. This doesn't hurt. So follow the contour, all the body. Number 3, for this exercise, we call this rhythm. We call rhythm of the heart. Sometimes syncopation is good, but not for this one. Just remember, it's the rhythm of the heart, this one. Okay? Then the ending is important. In everything, especially in the work with dying, you must always have an ending. That is, when I get through with the patient, you see, I have a beginning, I have the middle part, and the ending. And I always have an ending. And the ending is something like, though I have about 5 different endings, but this is just one. When I get to the car, see, what I do is, in a sense, I begin with a kind of image. I see a big ray of light all around me. That's the image. And just take only 1 second, and I go, confident that that ray of light, you know, protects me, refines me, strengthens me, all kinds of stuff like that. So I did never get fear you're going to catch something in the hospital or from people. You always that kind of fear. But once you do this imagery, you don't have that at all. Then I do the work, but when I'm through, you see, then I see myself stepping out of the ray light. And then I do a very simple thing like this. In case I caught anything, I want to let it go. So all the concerns, all the kinds of things that goes in your mind, you leave it behind. So when I turn around and enter my car, my friends, I never carry a case with me. I've done this work for 23 years. I've never got burnt out. It's because I have a technique of putting the business right there. Don't carry it with you. It's so easy to get seduced by this kind of, kind of thing we call love and compassion, and do lots of stuff that only eats out the very energy you need for the work. So the ending is very important in everything. Ending. So this ending here, if I did this, it's terrible, right? Because all of a sudden you withdraw. Where is she? Where the hell are you going? So I remember when I was in high school, my good wise old man said, "Don't kiss her once. Kiss her again. And again, and again." And one of the wisest things I've ever heard. So the way to end this is to put pressure. See, I'm telling her I'm leaving you pretty soon, so she's prepared now. Then I leave. Okay, now you all know, in a sense, center yourself, work on yourself first, let your hand express your concern and your love, follow the contour of the body, this rhythm and pressure before you leave. Okay, so let's all pair up and do each other. This is going to be our break. 2 or 3 of you can do it together. Come on, let's everybody stand up. Just relax. Okay. Okay, let's share our concern now. I think you had a question.
I have thought for a long while that death is a great experience. And when I try to share it with some of my friends who are very close and very
Isn't it? Could you hear her?
No.
No. Could you speak a little louder?
I've thought for a long while that death is a great experience, as Dr. Aoki says. And when I try to reach some of my friends who are dear to me, so that they will be comfortable when my death comes, and know that I embrace it, and I'm so excited. I'm going where all the great teachers are, where God is. There's something that I miss when I try to tell them this.
What happens when you tell this story?
I think I'm constrained.
Uh-huh. That's one. There must be something more than that. They think you're nuts, too. Yeah. So what is this? What is all this thing going on in them?
Fear.
Okay, that's right, isn't it?
I'm telling them, so I'm trying to take it away from them and share with them that it is a great experience. But there's this barrier that I can't, much as I love them and as they love me, I can't get through this barrier.
No. See, you got through them because something of the fear was emerged, right? So something penetrated. That's right. You got through them, all right, but perhaps not on the kinds of thing you wanted. But you did make a breakthrough, didn't you? You allowed them to touch the fear, among other things.
Oh,
didn't you?
their fear and not...
Not yours, no. It's nothing about you. It's everything about them. Now, this is very important for us to remember in this work. Never do this work to try to get something. Never. That's manipulation, my friends. If you're trying to, like she did, in an effort to make a breakthrough, to let them be comfortable and all that, you tell them a story. And in some way they reject you. You take it very personally. They rejected you. You were a failure, all this. My friend, that's a seduction. That's the excuse that we create in our mind. It has nothing to do with us. What you did was the most important thing. You shared with them something of yourself. What they want to do with them, my friend, is their business. That's none of your business. Let's make this very clear. You don't do this work in order to gain something. If you do that, something terrible happens to you every time. You just do this, what I call a presence. You just give this presence. And whatever happens is up to God, not to you. Make this very clear. In this work, don't ever work for results. See, the professional doctors, they have to work for results because they're sharing the skills, not the presence. That's right. So whenever you do your skills, you want to see outcomes from skills. But I don't share skills. I share myself. Therefore, I look for nothing. I emphasize what we call the being rather than the doing. It's difficult, but that's what you learn in this 23 years I've worked in this field. And love, doesn't ever work for results. It's just being, isn't it? It's the presence. So what you're doing then is an amazing sharing something of your presence to other people. And let me make it clear, what they want to make of the gift is up to them, not up to you. But because it's a presence, it always touches them. In this case, their fears perhaps, many other things. But nobody can really do the most honest thing and say, my friend, when you said that, I experienced a great deal of fear. Most people don't do that. They do all they did lots of kind of dance, funny kind of dance. Well, I will tell you this. Just today, I went to this company where this woman was killed in the ski accident. The company was, just in terrible grief. Sudden death does this every time. So I went and worked with the company people, and the three head people expressed the rage. When they heard the accident, the first thing they heard about this 6-year-old boy that's driving the ski that went over the thing. The first one is rage. The first thing they thought about the kid and the family. That's the first thing they thought about. But this rage. And he couldn't take this rage, so right away his mind said, how can we make of her death a great achievement? So they want to pass rules and regulations about the area, about boat and all that thing. And I said, but you said rage. When did you get in touch with your rage? You were projecting on the kid, on the family, on the laws that you're going to pass. So I said, now, if you had a chance to tell us where the rage is in your body, where would you point it? And he pointed to his heart. He said, that's where the rage is. I said, that's strange. So I asked the company people, when you think of the heart, what do you think about? They also, it's a symbol of love. And by God, he got this insight very quickly. He said, oh my God, he says, I experienced rage because I really cared, didn't I? You see, that's a real big breakthrough for him. So instead of just this rage that he could not somehow control, and therefore had to project it all over the place, he could now embrace the rage because it came out of his love, it came out of his caring, it came out of his heart. Yeah. And that made all the difference in the world to him. So I taught him how to get in touch with that. And you know, the more he talked, since he was the big boss, all the others in lower down the echelon start sharing about their rage too. And what a gift he gave to the whole company. Again, he wasn't doing this to get results. He was just being himself. But being himself, he opened up other people's being. That's what happened. Yes?
After death, is it important to wait several days until the body is cremated? I've heard this said.
Yeah. Can you share with the thoughts behind that?
Well, they say the spirit is not fully liberated from the body.
That's right. I've heard that. My feelings are, now that may be true, I know nothing really, but from my own experience, I think something like this, and this is just an assumption based on something I think I experienced, that when a person dies, I think they hover around the place for a while. And to give you an illustration of this, this is rather funny. This is a man who loved flower arrangement. His wife is one of the best teachers in flower arrangement in Hawaii. So about 2 days before he dies, he kept saying, now, I must give you some evidence, but he's a great believer, of how he would hover around the place. But he said, I will surprise you. That's what he said. He never told us what he does. So he died at Kuakini, and as soon as he died, we went to a little chapel and had a short service. But because he loved the flower arrangement, and the wife brought it, so we carried 3 of the flower arrangement to this little chapel. And it's a small place, and all the relatives were there. So we had to put it on the bottom of the floor, the 3 beautiful vases, flower arrangement. And I was reading the verse, and all of a sudden, the middle vase was knocked over. There was no wind, nothing. And the family all sat in the first row, but the others never knew what was happening. And all of us, you could see, even trying to hold back the laughter and the acknowledgement that he was there. He did this thing. Now, maybe they kicked it. I don't know. But you know, there was an amazing collaboration about the idea that we do hang around for a little while. And since I believe that so profoundly, my work with the survivors is, when the person dies, let's give him a big send-off. If they're going to harbor, why should we be so sad? Yeah? So I'm always tempted to sing, aloha, oi, aloha, oi, you know. Hey, give it. But I haven't dared to do it yet. But I have the impulse. One day I will do it. But this is only assumption. Yeah. Then, of course, the Buddhists have other assumptions, you know. That's 49 days, they say, the soul go traveling, and on 49 they re-enter and reincarnate in some other forms. The Tibetans have other ideas too. Yeah. But I do believe that we do. If this whatever is some kind of energy, you know, energy is never destroyed. So it must manifest somehow. Well, yes. Would you stand up so we can hear?
When you had that out-of-body experience after death, did you see if you were attached to a silver cord?
No. No, I didn't. But other people told me they've experienced that. They always had the silver cord. I didn't go through the whole episode. I was out of my body. At the best, I think 2 minutes only. Such a short trip. So I never experienced all the other things that I read about. Yes?
A young man that I know just killed himself. He was staying with my friends on the mainland.
I don't think they could hear you. Would you stand up and share the story?
A young man that I know just killed himself. He was staying with my friends. I was staying with them on the mainland myself, and with this man I just returned. And he seemed perfectly together and just started slipping within about a 4-day
Mhm.
period and talking about dying. And they didn't realize how serious it was, and they tried to talk to him. They took him to a counselor.
Mhm.
But at any rate, on the last day, he went and grabbed a knife and in front of them killed himself,
Mhm.
stabbed himself. And they both witnessed it. And my friend said, as she looked at him that last moment, because she had tried to get the knife away from him,
Mhm.
there was a look of sly triumph.
Mhm.
And obviously she and her daughter are both just so shaken.
As you say.
So what you said about the man looking at his wife with that anguished look, I'm
Mhm.
thinking, if you can share that technique, maybe I could share it with them.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I can give you other examples. This one is the most awesome one I've worked with. This woman, she's the oldest daughter. Her mother is sick. So she, with the permission of her husband and 3 children in Hawaii, were allowed to go to Los Angeles to be with her mother. So she was with her mother for 18 months, though she came back every now and then. Now, she's describing the last 3 months. The mother is in the hospital. So they have nurses during the daytime, but none in the evening. So she went there to be with the mother. Then she always came home in the morning, had breakfast, rested, and then went back at night time. Well, this morning she came back, and the phone rang, and the nurse said, "I'm sorry, your mother died." The first thought was, "I should have been there," is what she said. And this obsession that she should have been there, all her friends, her sister told her, "But look, 18 months you were there." But that one moment, that only one moment, overwhelmingly consumed her. And what happened was that because she kept dwelling, "I should have been there," she developed an awesome guilt, which is a normal guilt because it's a representation of your responsibility. But when you hover over the guilt and you nourish it, it becomes very neurotic, and that kind of guilt can kill you. So what happened when she came to Honolulu back, she spent about 3 months finishing all the details, wills, and when she came back in 3 months, she developed leukemia. In 2 months, she died, just like that. And if your people ask what she died of, the answer is guilt, absolute guilt. Because this whole thing, I should have been there. Now, I came into her life at the last 1 week of her life. I heard the story. But then already, the thing had gone to its culmination. So I worked with another woman whose, again, the son was burned in an airplane accident. So when she got to the airport to see the body, it's nothing but this terrible burnt, hardly recognizable. So every time she thought about her son, it was in terms of this burnt body. And this man, Paul, when he thought about his wife, was this terrible crush. So I said to him, and I use him as an example now, I said, "Paul, I'm going to put you through an exercise where you're going to allow her image to emerge as she was." And of course, the minute he thought of her, he broke down, terrible, agonizing, sobbing, deep, kind of crying. But we got through that one. I said, "Now, okay. Now, we're going to create an alternative. Because the image is all in your mind. So you have an option. You can create that one there, or you can create another one. So now, for heaven's sake, create something so opposite of that, something in terms of love." And when he said, after what he told us, what he thought he will see is, at least in the water where he's cradling her, her hair was, she loved the ocean, she loved to swim, she loved the way the hair looks, and a big smile on her face. But instead of that, what he saw was, she is in the kitchen, the ordinary kitchen, and here he's creeping up behind, because he loves to do that, just surprise her, and he grabs her, and she does this, and that's what emerged. And my friends, from that moment on, when the funeral hadn't taken place yet, but she said, this other image always came, but every time that came, he saw her in the kitchen, and he's embracing her. So he saw always, and I would wager, within 3 weeks, this other image would one day be as more powerful than the other original one. You can never erase the original. But by emphasizing this one, the original gets weaker and weaker and weaker, cannot hold you like this one will. That's right. I tell you, these images are so powerful, my friends. And it's all something we create up here. It's up here. So you have a choice. You can do this one or you can do this one. As you know, everything in life, you can do this one, you can do this one. It's your choice. So you can get up in the morning feeling, oh, what a beautiful morning, right? Or you can feel up, and you know what happens? You do this one and you attract so many people. You do this one, everybody's, whoo! Yeah. That's because every image, by the law of physics, creates a magnetic field all the time. That's right. Imagine 5 billion people, and my guess is 4,900,000,000 so many trillion people do this dumb stuff here. That's right. Just imagine what that magnetic field must be like. Huh? So after tonight, I hope you will dump this one too. Huh? Create this one. And create a kind of imagery that attracts a kind of field that somehow can resonate with many other fields, and then becomes what we call laser beam. It's a kind of fusion. And if you know the 100 monkey story, that image of yours might be the one that trigger all the 99 individual energy into a tremendous laser beam. So I say, very simple device, very simple, but the choice is yours. You don't ever need to nourish the negative image. You can always choose the alternative, every time. Even though it happens, like I talked with a man and worked with him, and he can remember when he was 6 years of age what happened to him. And that one image of the 6 years old has created a kind of a constellation of images that under circumstance, this is what he always triggers, this image. And when he triggers that, it's violent. Now, it's just one simple episode, but a permanent, indelible resource in his mind. And under certain circumstance, certain smell, certain sight, this is what he triggers. And when he acts out that role, he's anything but himself. But that's how powerful these images are. So I taught him to go back, and we recreated the whole scene. So now he has an alternative. Before he never had an alternative, but he never knew. So that's one way. Now many of you I know in the audience are expert in this field. You share so many. So this is your chance to share some of your experiences. You do, don't you? And many others here. Okay.
I noticed something tonight that you're dealing with the survivors, with the grievers,
Mm-hmm.
with the person going on.
Right.
And I found that really interesting and important, I guess, and I wanted to ask you a couple questions about that. It seems to me so often, especially in a religious context, we're so busy giving platitudes about this being a liberation when
That's right.
I've often felt that the person grieving, and I'm even thinking about myself,
Mm.
what I wanted to respond sometimes was, I'm not worried about the person who went on.
Mhm.
I'm angry, or
That's
I'm
right.
sad, or I'm feeling these losses. And when you're so busy giving these talks about liberation and freedom and that,
Mhm.
you're not dealing with what's going on here.
That's right.
I noticed you do it. You do deal with that.
That's right.
Is the best way to deal with it by being together in a group of some kind? I was
That
so
helps.
often now people don't do it. I mean, sometimes
Mhm.
I feel like maybe the old-fashioned wake had a purpose. I
Mhm.
saw my father
Absolutely.
enjoy and talk about the good times.
Yeah.
Do you see anything to do?
Absolutely. But let me say a word about this religious people. If you talk with dying people, they tell you that there are two professions that they really have nothing to do with. That's the doctors and the ministers. Both of them are too eager to give you answers all the time. That's all they want. They feel uncomfortable, they give you answers. They read right away. Jesus said, in my house are many mansions. And the 23rd Psalm comes so quickly. So that the patient never has a chance, really, to express themselves. And if they feel that they want to do it, at very critical moments, sometimes among doctors and ministers, it's because something happens to them. They keep dumping the stuff on you. Now this is really a terrible indictment on the two professions that works closest to dying people. It's a terrible commentary. So it's very obvious, isn't it, that if one can simply allow themselves, they feel angry, to express that, not at the patient, but because something is happening to them. Like these people today, all the rage, which was especially for every one of them, the rage was their strength, my friends. You know? In their mind, they would think it's a very negative thing, but it wasn't. The rage was the expression of them because they cared. Yeah. And the others got angry. And those are tremendous strengths, my friends. But in our society, we call them negative things. You shouldn't feel that way. That's baloney. These are authentically the human person emerging. And so the indictment about professionals is that their skills emerge beautifully, but the person never comes out. Which is the hurt, the dilemma. And I tell you, the best place to share that is with dying people, because they're so ready to accept everything. They don't judge anymore. No judgment. So what better place then to manifest yourself, which is your way of expressing your love and your care, isn't it? But when you have to hold that back and let professionalism and all kinds of answers emerge, you see, it's a cover-up, isn't it? So that's the first thing I say to the comment you made. And the other kinds of things is what we create quickly a network of people. It's very important to have this network. Like today, we really organize a network of people. They can get together and they're going to call me sometime this week. But you do that, that's your work. And a network of people can get through the grief so much faster than, what other kind of people. These are all involved in this law firm. Okay, any other kind of sharing? Yes?
I just got through reading the book, A Grief Observed by C.S. Lewis.
Yes, beautiful.
It was just phenomenal.
Isn't it? Yeah.
Very informing. And one of the insights in the book was that he never, before he lost his wife, who he just adored, but he never realized that she would also be grieving.
That's right.
And we never think of them in that way. It's always us and our loss.
That's right. Yes. This is a rather beautiful statement. I'm glad you made that. Like this girl that died Saturday, she grieved a great deal. But nobody noticed this thing. But in very simple ways, she showed the grief. When people came into the room, this is the bedroom, she recognized their voices. And she always wanted to acknowledge it and make contact with it. But she couldn't speak. But if you watched her hands spoke. This right arm is almost paralyzed. Nothing. She couldn't move it. But this hand always did make movement. You can see a little finger going up, going this way, going that way. Always trying to make contact. And in some real way, she was working through her own grief with this person. Whatever the unfinished business or the need to contact was symbolized by the real movement in her hands. The eyes were very closed. And sometimes the lips would move, but you couldn't hear anything. But if you were, just notice her hand, and if you were able to read the symbols, she was expressing some of her own grief to finish up with that person. It's amazing. So when the family, like her husband and the three of us, when she heard our voice, she never reacted anything like this at all. Yes.
In terms of the amount of time that you spend with a person and their family, over 23 years, what does that add up to about per family?
For the 107 pounds.
Is there no way to answer?
No. Yeah, that's right. Whatever it takes. Yeah. No.
Sounds like hours and
Yeah,
hours.
it takes hours and hours. Yeah. Like when I'm working on dime paper, it's every day I go twice.
Every day you go twice.
Twice, in the morning and in the evening. And depends, sometimes I stay 10 hours, depending on the people I have to work with. Yeah. All kinds of things goes on. Sometimes it's just 20 minutes. All depends, but whatever the occasion, you have to pick it up when you're there. You don't let it slip by. Because it's a glorious time to start working on people. Yeah. Some people just break down and you have to work on them. You cannot just leave them that way. So you work with all kind of people. The person I have to work with is very minimal. It's about 20 minutes, that's all. The rest you work on all the people all around you. That's what you're working with. Sometimes we go walk, around the place. If people didn't know, they think, who this Aoki? Hey, this young chick, walking around, the arms around her, or around the whole community like that. Yeah. That's the risk you take. But let me make it clear. We use the word work. That's not it. That's not it. Because you learn very quickly, every person you really try to assist always gives so much of themselves to you. See, it's amazing. Usually in 20 minutes, you have a love affair going on, a total stranger, and they open it up themselves like where they would never open to anybody. This must be an expression of the gift to you, This is what death does. Nobody becomes a stranger in the presence of death. Everybody becomes friends. You can talk right away. You can cry in their midst, without embarrassment. You can do lots of things. So her gift to all of us is to release us. Absolutely. And that happened to me in my work. When you release, you help them. Integrate that somehow. That's the work that I do. I think you had a question.
Yeah. I just wanted to get your opinion. Generally, death is the grief of the survivors.
Mm-hmm.
And usually survivors, when they see somebody near death, or when a person just passed away, expired, then they start thinking back about the past and saying, gee, I wish I had done this during my lifetime.
That's right.
So they have a lot of regrets. But yet you say that when a past person expires, just before they expire, they forgive. And it seems like the important thing is for both the person dying and for the survivors to express their love.
That's right.
So in that sense, if you express your love, they forgive. Things in the past are done, you can't do anything about it. The survivors shouldn't have any grief on how things could have been or what they could have done.
Yeah. They shouldn't, but we all do. All of us have some guilt.
Yes.
We always say, I could have done more. Everyone does this, right?
So what would your advice be?
Then finish it up. Whatever the mourness, you can always say, forgive me for not having done that. Just express a sense of forgiveness. Forgive me. That's it. That's it. That's all you need to do. Then you need to work on some other things, but for unfinished business, that's what you have to do that much. In other words, don't let that guilt become obsessive and become neurotic by and by. See, that's all I want. But to have the guilt is absolutely a sign of your responsibility. So let me make it clear. Too bad in our culture, guilt has become so negative. If you read some great literature, they blame the church for having created this awesome guilt. Because that's a good business. The more you make people feel guilty, the more you say, come, 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 we have the answer, la, 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 la. Yeah. But that's not true. Guilt is expression of something genuinely authentic about every human being. Guilt is the expression of a responsibility. We feel responsible, that's why we feel guilty. See, if you don't give a damn, you don't feel guilty. But that's not a human being. A human being cares. But that's too bad when that guilt, which is expression of responsibility, keeps lingering and you keep feeding it, then that guilt becomes very neurotic. Then you get terrible consequences. But I'm not talking about that kind of guilt. Okay, maybe time for one more question or statement. Yeah, go ahead.
I have another one.
Would you stand up so I can? Yeah.
My uncle has about a year to live, but he's on the main.
Yeah.
My
Turn around.
uncle has cancer and has about a year to live, but he's on the mainland.
Mhm.
And I know most of the family, I'm afraid, are avoiding him at this
Mhm.
point. And I'm here, but I would like to do something. What could
Yeah.
I do?
Okay. Several things. Let me just mention one. And if I spend half an hour on this one, it's not even half what I want to say. But it is this. Create an image. When you create images, never create negative images. Waste time. Create the strongest, healthiest image. Now, what image would you like to send to your dad?
To my uncle.
To your uncle.
You mean an image of him?
I'm asking you, up to you, that's for you. What image or what gift would you like to share with him in terms of an image?
Peace and love and mountains and sunshine.
But those are abstract concepts. Make it a very strong image. Would that be you? You full of love, right? Okay, now, if you close your eyes, tell me what the image of you, the full of love, is like. Give me some idea.
I'm giving him a big kiss.
Okay, that's it. So here now, this is expression of your love. So here she is now kissing uncle. Okay? Now you make that image as three-dimensional, as rich. The way to make the images powerful and rich is to tie it with all the senses of smell, taste, feel, all the five senses and emotions. So get in touch with these emotions about how it feels when you kiss him. Glow and all the lights. You see colors. Make all that rich. And you'll be surprised how that image becomes so real. And my friends, from the law of physics, the image she holds in her mind is as real as the image of her right now, full of love and kissing me. Right? See, the body doesn't, and the mind doesn't know the difference between what is authentically real and the image you create. But the image must be vivid, three-dimensional. And it's just real, full of what we call electromagnetic force. Like anything else is real. Once that image is created, then, you see, you send it to your dad. And since it's energy, it travels at the speed of light instantly. And the more powerful that image, as I said, a magnetic field is created with it. And so this magnetic field actually takes that image and nourishes it on the uncle. And in the most amazing way, he begins to resonate. Since I know this to be true, I kept thinking one time, why don't people get together, the church group, who are very good in this thing, and say, let's say at 7 o'clock, 5 people resonating on the same image, sending it to people who are sick and all this. And you'll be surprised the kinds of energy and mode that's created around this image. You can really feel. If you go to a certain group that are doing this work, the minute you enter, you can feel that amazing energy. You can really sense it in your body. So this is what you do. Every day, preferably get his permission first and tell him this is what you do at an appointed hour, and let him just be receptive to it, and by God, something starts happening. This is one thing you can do. Try it. Okay, thank you very much.